Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is Duskers. This is an early access title that came out on August 20th. It is $20 on the Steam store in early access, but this is a dev letter. What is dev letter? It's the series I have for early access games in terms of sort of giving my feedback to the developer and sort of giving my reasons of not only what I think of the gameplay, but where I think it can specifically improve. Now, before I begin, I want to make sure you guys know this key was obtained from the developer. In fact, they reached out to me to take a look at the game, so keep that in mind. Alright, so at the start of each game, in terms of a new game, you will have a randomly generated galaxies and randomly generated universe. Now, each of these galaxies and systems within a galaxy have their own purposes. Basically, the idea of this game is to survive as long as possible. Now, you do that by gathering resources, and in particular on the bottom right there, you'll see propulsion and jumps. Propulsion means I can move to anywhere else in the system, but jumps means I'm jumping actually to the next galaxy in question. Now, I do have objectives, for example, to scan Class A or B substation entirely, but I found that, maybe they're going to integrate that a little bit better, but it's really just survive as long as you can, the roguelike nature of this. Alright, so we're going to get into the mission here, and basically, your job is to get in, get out, get as many resources as you can without dying. Now, I have drones that will do my work for me, Jill, Colin, and Sarah. Each of them have their own abilities, and it's one of the strengths of the game. So the idea here is that Sarah's going to take a look into this first room, which is always a safe room. The first room that you unlock from is always safe, and any rooms that are open from it are always safe, at least from what I've seen so far. Now, she's scanning to find anything in the environment, things that I can use. You can see that there's that electronic symbol there is a fuel symbol there, so on and so forth. Now, I can control bots in a multiple way. I can actually navigate bots through the terminal, as you see right here. I'm moving 1 and 2 and 3 to R2 in a variety of ways. Now, Jill here can actually gather the resources. She's got a gathering module. And so she's going to try to gather fuel and scrap, which are used in my mission. Fuel to obviously fuel myself, but scrap to actually upgrade my bots and things like that. Now, I have to be careful of enemies, and that's what things like Sarah do in terms of the motion tracker. But Colin's going to use the generator here to power up so I can actually open doors. Some places will have power, some places don't. Now, I'm going to use the motion tracker here and see if there are any enemies around. No, they're not. In fact, I only know that R1 is clear. I don't know if any other room is clear, and unfortunately that doesn't help me. So what I'm going to use is Jill's stealth ability. Basically, I'm going to stealth in and see if there are any enemies in there so I can move into this next room. Lo and behold, there's a guy. I'm going to get out. So the idea here is that, okay, Jill was able to get in and get out without hurting portions. However, you'll notice that yellow portion, that A3. Well, that's an airlock, and well, there might have been something in the room, but I'm going to decide to take care of that enemy by blowing him into space. I open up the door, blow him out to space. There's a little bit of radiation, but I close the door, and now I can go in. Now, you have to be careful on this, because if there was anything in that room in particular, terminals can be damaged and other items can be damaged in the room if you leave it open for too long. Luckily, that terminal wasn't broken, although I can't really use the terminal anyway. Now, the idea here is that you got to be very methodical, very specific about how you're going to move your characters. Now, the game does an initial tutorial, but one of the things I have to say about the game in terms of devs is that I think you need to make that tutorial a lot longer, because there's a lot of elements to this game. In particular, while I do like self-discovery in games, I felt like you ill-prepared the player for a lot of the stuff that's going to come for them. In particular, the enemy types, where you have different enemy types. Like, that enemy type was basic. It was going to be somebody who shoots me. But there are things like viruses, for example, that the player has absolutely no idea how to deal with. It'll disable pretty much everybody on your team, and you really have no way of countering it, at least from what I know. Now, with that said, it's possible there may be a way. I think you need to teach the player a little bit more, or give them a resource in order to find that information. Now, I pretty much explored this entire place. I might have gotten rid of some scrap and stuff that was in R4, but all right, fine. We're going to make our way out here by sending everybody back to the ship and exiting this sort of run. Not everyone's going to be successful, and that's all right. And I do like the fact that this game does have a risk and reward factor in terms of, okay, I can keep on pushing, but I can risk it. Sometimes it's better to just live to see another day at this point. And so I'm going to exit the ship in question and move on to the next portion. Now, that's not... Basically, I'm going to be gaining as much as I can over time in terms of I want to find more inventory to put modules on my bots. I want to find more bots, and I want to find ship upgrades. Ship upgrades could help me find out what a room layout looks like in terms of a ship, or it may be able to power up a random room. I'm also able to use that scrap to repair and add modules to my bots if I get enough scrap, which is going to be important to keep them alive and keep myself alive. Now, this is going to be I don't want to say a technical person's dream, but this is going to be a strategy roguelike person's dream. The action isn't high, but it's more of a let's think things out kind of situation where you're playing almost a chess match with the game in question. You're trying to figure out what to do next. And I do like that element of it. Now, one of the early impressions, though, that I got is that while, yes, you're playing a chess match, you know, it's pretty simplistic in the way that it goes about things. Yeah, you have complicated mechanics in terms of, like, okay, each room may have its own set of, you know, enemies that may be different for everything. But when I see the $20 price tag on this, I wonder if it's well suited for the game in question. Right now, it's very simplistic, and even though you've got, you know, some complicated mechanics under the surface, I don't think you're going to get that draw that people are wanting. And in particular, one of the things that I have to say is the visuals. Now, I do like the fact that you guys put on the front of the title screen your sort of percentages on how you've done things. That is something I want to see more from the early access community, and I think that really needs to be taken to the next level. But it's not the fact that you guys got the CAD-like artwork on here in terms of the drawing mechanics, because for some people that's going to work. But like this effect right here, it's very hard to tell what is actually a barrier at times and what is not. As you notice there, Sarah actually bumped against that one side, and sometimes it's hard to tell what's a barrier and what's not. And in particular, that can be problematic when, like, dealing with a situation where you think you can go through and in fact you can't, and you've sort of allocated your resources for it. Now, that could be blamed on the player in terms of you didn't scout that well enough, but a visual representation like this is really hard on the eyes. I don't see players who are colorblind either really being drawn towards your game, because again, it has that old style to it, but it also looks sort of muddy, and it also looks very hard to read at times. It's not clear. And in a roguelike game, and in particular a strategy roguelike game, that's rather important. I would use something like Hack 686 as a fine example of having that aesthetic, but all the information being right there and it making sense at that point. It's also something that you guys need to take a look at in terms of pathfinding. I've also noticed that sometimes your pathfinding skills in terms of the bots in questions have problems. Sometimes it's not even in the environment either. It's the bot senses something, and I don't know what it is, and it just sort of shimmies there and doesn't do anything. You'll actually have to manually control it. Now, I do like the fact that you can lure bots. One of the things that you can do in this game is if you, like, for example, the motion sensor, if you are able to figure out a bot is in one room, you can actually open up doors and sort of lure them into the next room and have them come after you. Later on, you see that I stealth into a room and I actually don't close the door in time, and he comes into the room with me, and I'm like sitting there going, oh God, what do I do? I really like that element, and I think you guys may want to play more off that at this point. That is probably one of the stronger elements of the game. Again, your chess match situation in terms of moving your piece to figure out what your next step is. Now, I'm going to sort of circle back on this. While I like the chess match portion of it, again, I'm going to go back to the beginning here. I got to know what I'm doing in order to feel like I'm playing a real chess match. And again, I feel like this game is still needing to teach me more things, especially with new mechanics. Now, I have useful tools in terms of the help menu, in terms of the terminal there, but I feel like in this game in particular, with the uses there, I think a more practical example, a hands-on example, is better in this case rather than just the terminal info. I don't think the terminal info really works. In particular, things like the motion tracker. I want to know, like, okay, wait a minute, what determines a room to be scannable and what doesn't? Sometimes that's very, very unclear. And unfortunately, that really hurts in terms of, is it just random chance, or is it just, is it some specific, configuration or something? Now, I do like the random names. I do like the customization here. I do like that how the bots can be customized a little bit. I think you could actually take that to a next level, give us some cosmetic options in terms of like customizing your bots in question, which would be nice. It would actually feel more connected to the bots, because these feel like resources in question, and even though they are resources in question, they are your only resource, and you really want sort of a player connection there in terms of what they need to do. Now, I like the random generation of the game. It can lead to some really frustrating portions where, like, RNG will not be your friend. And I think you guys have addressed that in some of your latest blog posts, but I do want to sort of back that up with something. This is the kind of game I see random generation will really turn off a player very quickly. I almost want to say your first 2 runs should not be a random generation. It should be, a tutorial level where the player gets an idea of all the mechanics in question. Because unfortunately with RNG, one of the major problems there is that if you don't give them a situation that they're not accustomed to, you run into the situation where they're going to have to use that skill in a portion where, guess what, it's going to be critical, as opposed to something like a controlled environment that you may be able to, get yourself out of danger with if you do the certain actions in a timely manner. Otherwise, you run into a situation where you're being asked to do something very quickly, very on the ball kind of situation without the information to do it. Unfortunately, that's going to lead to frustration on the player's side. I mean, honestly, I think one of the major problems I have with the game, again, is the price tag. I don't see this game being a $20 game in its current form. And, I have seen good roguelikes, and this game is definitely going to have a niche audience, but I feel like if you're expecting a $20 price tag, especially for a more diverse audience, I don't think it's going to be shown up here. I honestly can't recommend this, only except for, real strategy diehards, real chess fans. I mean, again, I'm going to go back to that. If you're a chess fan, you're probably going to enjoy this game. I don't recommend a lot of things in early access, only because, guess what? It's early access. There's only really rare cases where I feel like the gameplay has come far enough that, yes, like Darkest Dungeon. But I feel like you need some oomph in this, some action, or not necessarily action, some more, behaviors of bots, some more, skills and things like that, which you may be developing, but at this current form, I just really don't see where the draw is. What else can I say about the game in terms of some of the elements of it? I do think that the objective portion of it could be a little bit more impactful in terms of, like, okay, you need to do this at a certain amount of days kind of thing. I really do think that if you're looking at how to sort of expand the game from a playability level, I think that's where you may want to focus on. Give your guys, like, a distress signal to, go and explore this. Give reasons to take that risk and reward to the next level in terms of using your bots and, risking your bots in question. Because right now, I think conservative play is the only real way to go. And while you can risk things, I don't see the risk and reward there in terms of really, really strengthening the risk and reward mechanics in terms of like, okay, making it clear that you will get a strong reward. Right now, the risk and reward mechanic, while it works, you may not necessarily get the reward, and I think that's maybe part of the problem. Now, you see here, this is a broken bot. I do gather the module off it, so now I got 2 bots with motions on it, which is nice. I would have preferred something like an interface terminal. As you see here, Sarah goes into this room. Okay, everything's cool. Everything's fine. I think it's coming up here, this portion with the stealth portion. I will say that the tense moments with the enemies, when you're sort of like waiting for them to do something, can be really tenseful. In particular with this portion with the stealth, you're sitting there going, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? And hoping that, okay, the enemy moves and goes away at that point. There are ways to sort of manipulate enemies in terms of lures and things like that. Again, I want to see more information. What on the lure does it do in terms of how I go about things? Okay, so you see here, I back up. I'm sitting here. The enemy is sort of scanning around. I'm in stealth mode. I'm, draining, hoping that he goes out of the room. Close the door. Unstealth. Thank God. I'm okay. All right, I hope this is a helpful lesson for the guys over, for the Duskers developers, and I hope you guys got an understanding of what the game has to offer. I will be taking a look at the game when it's fully released, as I tried to do. I know I still have that Onikira review, or Onikira look at. I got to still do that. It's just one of those things where just like there's so much going on right now. All right, this is Dragnix signing out. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and keep on gaming. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you'd missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.